Two up for Arsenal, Smith and Campbell. Now, can Campbell use his strength? He does do! He tucks it away. And his run continues. And Arsenal, who've had quite an awkward 10 minutes, come out of their shell to take the lead. It came off Beasley, and Campbell was too forceful for Booker. And Bob Booker lost the battle. Sheffield United lost the goal to Kevin Campbell. Bryson might fall for him. Now, who's going to come out of this mess in possession? Well, it's Dixon who clears. Campbell who shrugs Beasley aside. Smith is there with him. Smith takes it early and steers it home with real style. And Arsenal have broken out to take a two-goal lead. With 17 minutes left, and the force of Campbell very much to the fore again, and how well Smith took that first time. He's got a great streak going as well. 5 now in...
Paul Merson came on as substitute and was heavily involved. Smith's shot taking a deflection for an own goal off Southampton fullback Adams after 69 minutes. 5 minutes later, something of a rarity when the Arsenal defence conceded their 14th goal. Matthew Le Tissier making the most of a hesitant defence, his 21st of the season. Southampton 1, Arsenal 1, David Bovin, ITN Sport at the Dell.
Already won the FA Cup as a Southern League side, and they'd unknowingly started their tradition for winning things in the first season of a decade. There were more celebrations in the High Road when the Cup was won again in 1921. The 30s belonged to Arsenal. The Cup-winning team of 1930 was a blueprint for the future envisaged by a former apprentice mining engineer. Herbert Chapman laid the foundations for 5 championships in 8 seasons. Across Europe, Arsenal's name became synonymous with English football. In the immediate post-war years, there were 2 more First Division titles for Arsenal, 2 more FA Cup finals. Victory over Liverpool took the trophy back to North London in 1950. But a couple of miles away at White Hart Lane, something new was hatching. Push and run was the gospel. Manager Arthur Rowe was the preacher. And wing half Bill Nicholson was among his disciples.
You played first-time football as much as you possibly could. And you didn't play the long ball. You played a short ball game because obviously it's much more accurate than to play the long ball game. It's accurate from 2 points of view. It's easier from the player's point of view to kick a ball accurately, shall we say, over 20 yards than it is to kick a ball over 50 yards. And then on top of that, of course, it makes it very difficult for interceptions. The longer the ball's got to go, the easier it is to intercept.
In successive seasons, Spurs were champions of the Second Division and the First.
Right, finish off with a 20-yard sprint then. Come on, 20-yard sprint.
When Bill Nicholson put on the manager's tracksuit, the philosophy was the same. Keep it simple, keep it short, keep moving into space.
It's Allen. Dyson back there calling for it.
Manage the club. Bertie Mee had been at Highbury long enough to absorb the traditions and understand the expectations. It wasn't just any old club, was it?
Far from it. The best. The best. No, it wasn't any old club, but it fitted in, I think, perhaps with my age group and being a little older than the average football club manager. I still held certain standards and values, and the club epitomised those values and standards, and I was very, very happy to try and maintain them. What didn't come into my reckoning, and 1 or 2 of my predecessors just before my time seemed to worry a great deal about the success, and particularly about the bust of Chapman in the hall and the photographs of these great sides of the 30s and so on. Didn't worry me to that degree. It rather was a stimulus to achieve the same. and to try and outdo them if possible. Very much like George, the approach that George Graham has adopted, and I think that's right.
The old boys from that era are a close-knit bunch. Bertie Mee bumps into Geordie Armstrong and Frank McClintock, members of the side that matured under his guidance. George Graham was another who played at the turn of the 60s.
Armstrong to take the corner. That's a good header, it's there, Graham!
How would you characterise the playing style of that team?
Very hard working, good attitude, tremendous resilience. Possibly could have done with a little bit more flair looking back on it, but it was successful for us, and we wouldn't want to put it aside to be more attractive. Success was the main ingredient, and we were actually quite prepared to sacrifice a bit of flair for the discipline.
The reward came in 70-71. Arsenal were in the cup final and they could win the league. 5 days before Wembley came the last crucial game against the old enemy at White Hart Lane.
We were great friends. We used to drink with each other, and we all lived in fairly close proximity to each other. It was the fans who were probably get the right hump and needle. But during the game, yeah, there was plenty of needle in it, because I remember Alan Mullery and Alan Golzine, and Alan Golzine certainly wasn't a dirty player. Alan was a very hard player. But they had lost their head a little bit that night, and there was a few collisions on Bob Wilson, their goalkeeper. And Alan Mullery was really seething during that 90 minutes. He was desperate that we didn't win the championship. Quite rightly, I understand that. So there was great passion in that game.
North London continued to have a big say in the FA Cup. Alan Sunderland's goal won it in 1979. This was the second of Arsenal's 3 successive finals. When that sequence ended, Spurs took over for a couple of seasons, retaining in 1982 the trophy they won in style the previous year.
And still Ricky Villa. What a fantastic run. He scored. Amazing goal.
Then, as the 90s approached, Arsenal broke Merseyside's league monopoly. Michael Thomas's goal at Anfield gave Highbury the title for the first time in nearly 20 years. Tomorrow, it will be Spurs versus Gunners again, and 2 of the architects of that success will be there to watch. It isn't just Arsenal, is it? It's the Arsenal.
Correct, it is. That's very true.
It's something apart from... It is the establishment club.
Yes, indeed, and I was very proud to be part of it, still am, and I think anyone connected with the club should be proud of it.
You played in the great push and run side, and you helped create the side that did the double.
What do you mean, helped to create
well, you
it?
created it, fair enough. I won't argue with you. You came here as a ground staff boy in, 1936, so, I mean, it's a lifetime you've spent here. What does Tottenham mean to you?
Well, that's a funny old question, what does it mean? Well, it's been my life, hasn't it? It's been my life, it's been everything to me. It's been too much, really, I think. When I look back, when I look back sometimes to my family growing up, to my daughters, to their families as well, and I probably spent a bit too much time with Tottenham Hotspur, given too much to Tottenham Hotspur, and not enough to my family, and I can honestly say that now, genuinely say that now, but nevertheless, I've got no complaints.
It's off the field where the strongest contrasts are currently to be found. Tottenham's complex troubles have been extensively chronicled. Building the new East Stand upset supporters who lost their traditional perch, and alarmed accountants who watched costs far exceed the budget. Diversification seemed like reasonable business enterprise, but it didn't offset the club's debts. It made them worse. Pawning the spoons wouldn't solve the problem. Tottenham's prize asset is Paul Gascoigne. Lazio are keen to pay the ransom money, but will it all end in tears?
If Spurs' debts are £18 million, the sale of Paul Gascoigne does not rescue them. They will probably, after all contractual obligations are met, would net 5 to 6 million from the sale of Gascoigne. Take that off 18, and you still have 13. That's a very large sum, and would leave Spurs deep in trouble.
Statements have been promised and postponed Terry Venables continues to talk to the city, but no one is able to tell the shareholders or the fans or the players where the takeover consortium stands now.
It's reached the deadlock because it has two problems. Firstly, it has to buy out the shareholders. That will cost it around £9 million, and I think most parties agree it has the money. The real hurdle is that it has to prove to Midland Bank, the main creditor, which is owed £11 million, that after the purchase goes through, it can repay that money. Midland Bank is demanding to know the identity of the backers so as to be satisfied that the money can be repaid. But the backers are insisting on anonymity. That has created deadlock. It is a very, very high-stakes poker game, and at stake is the future of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Like Tottenham, Arsenal have been engaged in extensive and expensive ground development, but the new clock end has arisen with no sound of alarm bells ringing. Even in times of recession, it's hard to imagine that Arsenal, with its long history of merchant bankers in the boardroom, should be anything but financially solid. It doesn't prevent them sympathising with their neighbours.
Nowadays, it can't be helped. Finance and football go hand in hand. And I think it's very, very sad to see one of the top clubs in the country being in these having these financial problems, which is probably nothing to do with the football side of the club. And I can feel, because whatever you think about it, definitely players suffer because reading the papers constantly about the financial situation the club's in through no fault of their own. And I admire Terry for doing what he's trying to do at the present time, and I hope he succeeds. If he wants to take over the club, I'm sure he'll do a very good job of it. And it'll be interesting to see a football person running the financial side of the club.
When Chairman Irving Scholar summoned Terry Venables from Barcelona, the challenge was to break Merseyside's grip on the league while keeping a wary eye on the blossoming threat from across North London. This season, though, as the end of Venables' contract approaches, the priorities have changed.
We're not talking about Tottenham and Arsenal. I'm trying to make the point. We're talking about, we've gone through an experience at Tottenham Hotspur that Everton and Liverpool, as far as my knowledge is concerned, has never gone through. We're not talking about comparing teams. We're talking about a period of time when there would be no more Tottenham Hotspur.
I understand that, but isn't it made even worse by the proximity of Arsenal?
It can't be made any worse, I can assure you.
There'll be a full house, 80,000, at tomorrow's semi-final. If you were to cast a net from Wembley in the general direction of Tottenham and Arsenal, you would catch a great many fans of the two clubs who are players themselves, budding Mersons and Gascoignes who are learning their skills in the local Sunday leagues.
Come off, 11. Come off, Kenya.
Where I spend most of my Sunday mornings, teams are split more or less down the middle, all for one and one for all in their own cup tie, deadly rivals as supporters.
A lot of people say it's a lot of trouble, but it's real good fun. It's real good banter between the boys. You know.
But now you've got through this semi-final today, that's another fixture on your list. How are you going to be fixed on the 14th?
Well, we've got to fight that bridge when we come to it. I mean, at the moment, it's there's quite a few boys who want to go, obviously, and I've got to see Ron and see what fixtures are coming up on the day.
I will have to make a fixture, unfortunately, that Sunday, but being reasonable about it and thinking and trying to be sensible and fair to everybody, I'll have to throw the ball in their court. I'll let them have a postponement on the Sunday, but they must play it within that week in the midweek.
When White Hart Lane and Highbury head for Wembley, there'll still be the unlucky ones without a ticket. They will gather at the local watering holes to continue the rivalry that's been stoked up ever since the draw was made.
You got any friends who are Arsenal fans?
I am not, certainly not.
Really like that, is it?
No, I have got a few friends, yes, you're quite right, but we don't talk football then.
We have a pact to hate each other, but we're all in love, really.
Oh, well, as long as they lose all the time, we have a great relationship. You know, fantastic relationship, as long as they're below us every season, great.
What happens if you lose?
I'll take the week off work. I can't face any Tottenham fans in work.
Is it really as bad as that?
It's terrible. You can't see them.
Just as their shirts have changed with changing fashions, so the playing styles have adapted to the passing years. But not all that much. Arsenal are still a coherent unit, unyielding in defence, always capable of conjuring a goal from somewhere. And Spurs, at their best, seem to have handed down with the shirts an inbred belief in the use of space, the short pass and intelligent running.
Gascoigne, yes!
At White Hart Lane they loved Tommy Harmer and John White and Glenn Hoddle and Ossie Ardiles. Now there's another in the line.
Gascoigne takes over. The crowd were pleased about that. It was going nowhere, that attack, but it is now. Walsh, Gascoigne, it really is going somewhere now. It's a brilliant goal, and that's what he can do.
He will be possibly the best of them all. And it's always difficult when you try to judge someone like Gascoigne, because he's been here 2 years. You're looking back at Hoddle's 10 years, and you're looking back at Mackay's 10 years. So if you look back at the period of time he'll be here later on, you might see even more than what we've already seen, hopefully, and I'm sure we will.
Tottenham's longest-serving professional is the captain, Gary Mabbott, who joined in 1982, the days of Archibald, Hazard and Ricky Villa. He makes a clear-eyed comparison between the semi-finalists.
In the First Division now, I think you really need to be a team that's sort of a very good, solid team, and I think that as a team unit, I think we've let ourselves down perhaps over the last few years. But whereas by that I mean is that perhaps...
But players like Anders Limpar have been signed to give not only depth, but variety too. With George Graham, options is the name of the game.
I think we'll probably get a bit more flair than the side that I played in. We've got two great wingers, and well, we've got 3 or 4. We've got Rocastle, who's just been out injured. We've got Merson, who is on one wing, Limpar is on the other. We've got strength and subtlety up front with Campbell and Alan Smith. The back 4, could prove to be the best defensive record that Arsenal's ever had. 13 goals in 31 matches. It's a tremendous achievement.
Is it a team you'd have liked to have played in yourself?
I probably wouldn't have got in the team.
When Graham played 20 years ago, he was one of only 4 players who were bought in. The rest were found by Arsenal scouts, developed through the youth team, brought on in the reserves. And that's a good housekeeping recipe that's been continued. The probable 13 for tomorrow includes 7 who are homegrown. One is David O'Leary, who first played for Arsenal at Wembley 13 years ago. Vindication of a decision he made when he was captain of Era schoolboys and had the pick of the glamour clubs.
I went to Man United just before that, and I came down to Arsenal down for a week's trial, and both clubs asked me to sign, and both clubs were fantastic. The reason I plumped for Arsenal was the homegrown players that I looked at. They bring them through, and I thought, well, if I get a chance, if you're good enough, you'll always get a chance here. And I've always said to young players now that sign here, and if you're good enough, you'll get a chance to play in the first team.
Among the latest crop is Kevin Campbell, scoring impressively as the season nears its climax. He's another who had plenty of choice of clubs.
Yeah, I've been at a few clubs, but I supported Arsenal as a boy. And once I knew of Arsenal's interest, there was no way I was going to go to any other club.
I've worked under 4 managers now, and the policy has always remained the same. And I would think that this comes directly from the board. We've been doing well with the youth. We want to continue with it.
In this aspect, comparison with Tottenham is striking. It's still only the semi-final.
Whether you play at Wembley or not semi-final makes no difference. The traditional...
with this game is the added incentive. You don't want to lose a semi-final against Spurs.
Well, we've had 2 games against them this season. The game at Highbury was a bit of a dour affair, but the one at White Hart Lane I thought was a very good game. I think it's probably one of the best performances that we've put on this season, and I think if it hadn't been for the brilliance of David Seaman, I think we'd have perhaps won the game 2 or 3-0.
They've got a lot of quality players. We've not beaten them this season. We've had 2 no-scoring draws, so that just shows you the respect everybody has for one another. And on semi-finals anyway, there's no such a thing as a favourite. It's been proved over the years.
You and George Graham go back a long way. You're still very good mates?
Not this week. He's a good friend, but we've got one thing in our mind, and that's me for Tottenham to go through and him for Arsenal. And we make no bones about that.
But over the years, you'll have talked about football a lot, and you'll have a good idea what's in his mind and vice versa.
That's right. I've helped him, I think, and I think he's the first to say I've helped him in early days. Not now. He's doing wonderfully well. I think it's the worst thing I've ever done.
So North London prepares for its own private semi-final. For Arsenal, maybe another step towards the double. For Tottenham, maybe another lift in a season when their very future has been in doubt. Winning or losing won't be the end of the world, but for a while it will certainly feel like it.